What's up, guys? Welcome in. We had just finished celebrating our 50th anniversary of Earth Day in a much different fashion, behind our own computer screens, kind of cooped up in our own houses, and it brought up an interesting scenario when now we bring in a bunch of different journalism students here at UNO, a lot of Radio 1 faces, to talk about the different circumstances that are facing us in the current climate of this world with COVID-19 and the epidemic facing our world, and specifically us as journalism students. I know firsthand I've had to do one news pack so far during this COVID-19 pandemic, and my experience trying to come up with different material was definitely very interesting, to say the least. The most unique I've ever had to do. I mean, it came down to a bunch of different things. My package had to do with football players, and I couldn't even film these football players working out face to face because we weren't supposed to. And that creates a lot of obstacles when you can't even meet with the people that are the base of your story. And I think that's one thing that a lot of journalists are having to run into nowadays, is different situations where you can't even be in front of the person that you're trying to cover. And I think that creates a lot of obstacles in trying to make a story come to life. And one thing I found very interesting about this whole scenario is just the way reporters have had to go about covering COVID-19. And one thing in particular is the fact that it seems like information is constantly changing. I know that there's probably people that can back this up inside this chat right now, but it just seems like news is always changing with what the government wants of us in terms of government regulations, what businesses are doing, whether they're opening up, whether they're staying closed. It seems like day to day, numbers are changing, rules are changing, opinions are changing, and it's forced journalists to kind of be adaptive. We kind of have to be ready to change the narrative in the drop of a hat. It went from, a month ago, it was, is the NCAA tournament going to be played with or without fans? And then a week later, there's no NCAA tournament. And it's things like that where things have just changed so quickly that I don't know if anybody can back this up, but it just seems like journalists have to change completely the way they report normal news.
Yeah, I'll start. I mean, I had the opportunity to talk to Phil Bergman of KMTV. He was doing a story on, students not having, or, seniors not having a graduation ceremony. And I was just talking to him about what it's like to have to ask people to do interviews for stories. And it's like you said, Matt, you can't really talk to the people in front of you. You do it like us here on Zoom, or you stand 6 feet apart, and there are videos and photos all over Twitter and Facebook about people standing 6 feet apart. I mean, I remember driving to Target just the other day, and people are literally sitting in the Target parking lot 4 or 5 stalls apart, sitting on the trailer beds of their cars. And it's just so weird because that's the way people are socializing. There's stories everywhere, and it's always changing, like you said. I mean, one day you were allowed to go to the park, and now the next day there's a sign there that says, don't go into this tennis court or you could get fined. I mean, it's crazy. There's police cars parked in parking lots of these elementary schools asking kids to leave basketball hoops, and then right there is a story. It's a very different time we all live in. And like Matt mentioned in the actual Earth Day broadcast, this is history right here. This is something we're going to remember forever. This is going to be taught in textbooks, and we're all living it as a part of it. And it's just so strange, but it's also kind of humbling to remember how nice we had it. And now it's just going to be very different moving forward.
And I could piggyback, honestly, off of what you just said there in terms of interesting stories. I read something the other day about, police basically having to monitor neighborhoods for kids playing outside. And like you said, it's just crazy the history that's in front of us, the fact that, kids simply playing outside with one another, something that's been done for centuries, just kids socializing, having a good time, that's being restricted. And I think that that's something that is so unique and so interesting about this time, that things as simple as just close socializing is taken away. And regardless of how it's affecting journalism, it's crazy how it's affecting day-to-day life. And it's another thing we mentioned briefly on the Earth Day broadcast, but just the fact that something as simple as going out for a walk has become like a huge mental relief for a lot of people, including myself. Like I'm one of the people where I get really antsy really fast. Like I feel like I need to do something if I'm just kind of sitting doing nothing. And this kind of self-quarantine has made me kind of lose my mind a little bit, because it seems like more often than not, I'm looking for something to do and looking for a way to just release this cooped up feeling. And outside of journalism even, it's insane to see just how much COVID-19 has completely shifted the landscape of everybody's lives.
Yeah, and to go along with what you're saying, specific journalism stories such as like ESPN or sports, like they don't have anything to talk about. So that has changed that industry in like a huge way.
Well, I mean, and kind of piggybacking off that too is, I mean, not only is the sports industry shifted, it's completely, I mean, changed leagues. XFL has already declared bankruptcy because COVID-19 essentially eliminated their investment that they made at the beginning of the year to try to kickstart that league. So I think there's a lot of different, sports organizations, not just sports, everywhere where finances have become a huge issue across the board, and companies are struggling to stay in business with all this stuff that's happened. So it's just crazy how widespread it is, with specific stories and just in a broad sense at how much the landscape has shifted everywhere with this outbreak.
Yeah, it's hard with graduation not happening because I was, I had everything planned out for the last semester, doing all my last everything. And then, after graduation, looking for jobs, but now everything's different. It's going to be harder to find jobs. I was supposed to work a lot to save up for moving somewhere. So it's just uncertain, and we're lucky in the field we live in that people are still actually like able to do stuff like able to do stuff from home. But yeah, it's just an uncertain time in that regard.
And maybe that maybe I should ask a question to everybody and kind of open it up and see what people have opinions on. But how has this maybe affected your guys' like work life? Like for me, for example, I know Lillian was saying that she's going to be heading back to work probably this week or next week. I know my golf course that I work at, we're opening up within the next week, and my boss is already looking for people to fill shifts. For you guys, is there maybe been a shift in looking for jobs or finding work, or whether it be with your current job or maybe a job you're looking for? How has your guys' work landscape shifted as a whole?
Well, I work at a grocery store. I work with Ben Helwig over at a grocery store, but it's ever since this whole thing started, it's been a panic mode at the store. Our hours changed from like 8 to 8. Now it's 8 to 10, but you see a lot of customers going through buying $1,000 worth of groceries, 4 carts full of groceries. You'd never know if it's just for them stocking up for the next few months or just giving out to food banks or anything. But throughout the last few times I've been working there, it's just we've been limiting toilet paper because we've just been running through that all the time, hand sanitizer as well. Now you're seeing customers wearing masks, they're wearing gloves. Now I have to clean my belt at my register every time I get a customer just to disinfect the belt, just to keep everything clean. It's clean, clean, clean. Clean the registers, clean the carts, clean everything. It's been a huge change at my store. And we have a restaurant there. With all the restaurants closing down, our restaurant's closed down, so we're just finding other things to do there.
Yeah, I think work's been crazy. I work in healthcare, so I know the way you treat people and the way you come in contact with them, it's very different. Yeah.
And I mean, specifically at the golf course I work at, we've completely shifted the way things run and things operate nowadays. I mean, we've completely flipped the cup now, like the hole. We've flipped it upside down so that people aren't touching the bottom of the hole. They're just touching the ball every time they go in to pick up their putt. We've completely taken out flag sticks. That way people don't touch flag sticks. When people bring their carts in at the end of a round, we have to sanitize the entire cart before it goes back out. There's been a ton of shift in terms of the way we go about taking care of not only ourselves, but our customers. And I think that relationship is very important when you talk about work too. Not only keeping your employees safe, making sure, like when I have to wear gloves now, and they recommend we bring masks to work. And obviously those are hard to come by, but not only the way employees interact, but making sure your customers are staying safe on top of that. I think that balance for employers of trying to keep not only your employees safe, but still make revenue and make sure people are still coming in the door and keeping them safe. I think that is so interesting, that dynamic that's going on with COVID-19 right now.
I think
That's crazy. Sorry, Lillian, go ahead.
I think people too who haven't been working, it's creating a huge issue with mental health because you're used to being so busy all the time. I know I've lost motivation to do basic things. It's hard to really, when you're so, I think our generation has just been so used to being so busy. And so it makes it hard to just stop doing everything, especially people who are really extroverted. And, and then it affects a lot of people financially too. I don't know about you guys, but I still haven't gotten an unemployment check, and I've been applying for the past like 3 weeks.
And for
It was
me, it's
actually,
been no, go RC.
I was just gonna say, I've actually been really lucky. The company I work for is an international company. We've been able to work from home, but the thing is, I work in the kind of like the corporate communications, internal communications, and with our facilities in India and Spain, that kind of thing, we've had to really scramble to get information out to our employees so they know what's going on. And, when's their next check going to be coming, what, where are they going to do for time off, that kind of thing. So it's put a lot of stress on us to get that information out. But so far we've managed pretty well. And like I said, I'm really lucky because I get to work from home and I don't have to worry about those paychecks.
Yeah. I was gonna say similar to him. I'm working from home, and it's kind of weird. I would expect clients to not reach out as much, but doing videos, a lot of people want like videos edited that they've stocked up in piles. So I've been getting a lot of that work lately.
Jessica, working in healthcare, and then also for the folks there, even at the grocery stores, because I've been comparing truck drivers and service workers really as folks that are on the front line as healthcare workers. So all of these people who have made our country still run and function, it's been incredible. What about your own safety? How do you feel about that when you're at work?
Well, I don't know. Sometimes you don't even know who's coming in. I know it's hard to explain because everything changes so fast and everything changes very differently. You're there one day and everyone can come in, and then the next they're taking people's temperatures. And it was first for the patients that were coming in, and then it was for the employees. And then they started limiting us what doors we can come in and what doors we can come out. And then they started limiting us to how we clean, what we the mask we wear. And it's just you don't know if you're going to get sick or if you're not. And if you do, I mean, what can you do? You just have to take leave basically. So it's just a lot of uncertainty, a lot of not having control of what's going on and not knowing. And it's just you just take it day by day and just go with the flow and hope everything works out for the best. And I mean, that's all you basically can do until all this is over, and just want everything to go back to normal, basically just over the situation, I think.
And I think oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jodine, but I think that accurately assesses kind of the entire situation with not only our daily lives, but as journalists. I think that we kind of just have to go with the flow. We don't really know what the immediate future holds for us. Everything's kind of uncertain. I know that the cases in the state of Nebraska in the last week have doubled. And I know the projection of when we're supposed to hit our peak of number of cases is probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks. I know that it's probably pretty soon is when we're supposed to hit that high point. And I think the fact that there's still businesses trying to open up, even with all of this stuff still going on, it leaves a ton of question marks for a lot of different people, mainly people like Jessica, for example, who is a healthcare worker, and Joey and Ben, who work at a grocery store. I mean, these are people that have to be in front of everybody who potentially wants to come in and be a customer. And that leaves a lot of anxiety for workers and frankly for customers too. I know my mom, she goes and picks up groceries from the grocery store and she doesn't get out of her car. I mean, she picks it up through the pickup orders because she wants to interact with as little of people as possible. And I think that that's a measure that a lot of people have been starting to take. And I think that just the uncertainty and the go with the flow mentality that people have with COVID-19 is kind of creating more anxiety because people don't really know what to expect in the immediate future.
Well, I think
And that's where I was kind of reaching out on the putting all these pieces together. It sort of dovetails off what Lillian said with mental health. And I think after 3-4 weeks of being self-quarantined and having little interaction with the public as possible, I think that is going to be the next sort of tsunami type pandemic that we might not talk about as much as we need to. I don't know, again, but I think that's a really big underlying issue, is this mental health for people that are cooped up and people that aren't working, that people can't pay their bills. It's just such an incredibly, as Jessica said, uncertain time. And I think that is the remarkable thing about this.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to see how people interact with you when they actually go and they talk to you. It's not the same, you know, they don't come in with a smile. Most of the people like that you get are very rude, and you're just surprised on like the change of behavior like that people get. And like, I get it, like if they're home all the time and, you know, things build up or whatever, but it's just very crazy to see. And like, I'm very curious to see like how people are going to interact after all this is over. Like, are we going to still distance from each other? Are we going to be the same? Like, you know, a couple weeks ago, it was perfectly fine to hug someone and show like affection and love. And now you can't even do that. Like, you're just trying to like stay away. And so it's kind of, I don't know. I just want to see what normal is going to be like once that time comes around.
I think we need to remember that this isn't necessarily a one-time thing. This isn't like a tornado or a hurricane or something. This isn't, you know, it's a 1 month and then everything goes back. I mean, could go on for years until there's a vaccine or something. We might have waves of unemployment or just having to shut down for a while until all this gets sorted out.
And to Jessica's last point, coupled with what Lillian said earlier about people getting antsy and wanting to get back out in the world. And I know Florida just like recently reopened some of their beaches, and 30 minutes to an hour later, it was completely packed. So people are, you know, itching to get back out in the world already, even though it's only been like a couple months.
And that's a prime example too, I think, of just how things, kind of to RC's point, this isn't going to be a one-time thing. This is going to be something that's going to gradually resolve itself. I mean, this is something I could see next October, next November, you know, probably less restrictions than we have now, but there still could be social restrictions as to how many people are allowed to gather. I mean, I still am not sure, me as a sports fan, I'm still not sure if we're going to have college or pro football next year. I'm thinking that we're probably not going to have them. I hope I'm wrong. But that being said, there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think the fact that places like Jacksonville are trying to push people to get back to their normal lives, I think could just prolong this whole process even further if people are, you know, taking risks that they necessarily shouldn't be. And I think that's going to be the interesting thing to see over the next, you know, coming weeks or coming months, is just how not only we react in terms of finding ways to stay safe and not get out in the public, but how this all progresses, like Jessica said, when this is all over. I mean, this is going to be interesting because when it's over, it's not going to be over. We're still going to have restrictions as to how many people can be in certain places and things like that. So it's going to be an adjustment. I mean, it's going to be probably city or state by state kind of saying, okay, now we can meet in groups of 10, and then it'll be probably groups of 20, and it'll slowly go back to normal. But I mean, this is not something where overnight it's just going to be, oh, things are back to normal. And I think that's another thing that is very interesting about this whole development.
Yeah, my dad is a school administrator, and the governor is actually asking him and other districts to come up with a plan for the fall of what they're going to do if there's another outbreak. And they're thinking about either having like divide up classes, so like 10 kids come in 3 days a week and the other kids come in the other 2 days, and like things like that to make smaller classrooms realistic. And like we're thinking about new ways already about the next wave.
Well, I don't know. I think people will rebel. I don't think I could. I don't want to spend I have a different perspective. I don't want to spend my life hiding. I think things have to reopen eventually. I don't think I get like social distance measures, but I think things have to start to go back to normal. There's no way the economy can last. A girl in California like killed herself because she was so depressed because everything that's happening. I just don't think I could do it for like much longer. I don't think a lot of extroverted people are having a really hard time. So I think they're just, I don't think that it will, I think things will change, maybe numbers at places, but I don't think that this will last as long as everyone thinks it will, like with my work already opening up. Yeah, so that's my unpopular opinion.
I do know some places they're planning on, if they're working from home, they're going to stay at home for like the next year. And that's what a lot of places are doing. And then my restaurant I work at, they are deciding to open like a quarter of the restaurant and then slowly open more and more parts of the restaurant over time, just in case something were to happen again. So I could see people opening it up slowly. But a lot of people, like my roommate, like calls people, he's going to stay at home probably for the foreseeable future.
And maybe I'll ask one kind of final question that maybe people can touch on if they have anything to say about it. But just how do you guys think this all is going to resolve itself? And I know that's a very broad question because like we've been talking about, this is going to be a huge process with a million different pieces, and it's probably going to be very complicated over the next year and a half. But with businesses, with your own personal lives, whatever the case may be, I just kind of want to get your thoughts on how you think this all is going to kind of come to an end, whether it's going to be a very slow process that takes years, or maybe this kind of wraps up and ends itself by the end of the summer. What are your guys' thoughts?
I think we got to let it run through its course until we can go back to normal. That's just what I believe. Even though we want to go back to what we've been doing the last month, we're just going to have to wait for this to end before we could actually do our normal activities, such as going to the gym, going to a restaurant, going to the movies, physically going to school, seeing our friends. So pretty much we're just going to have to let it run through its course.
I agree with Joey because like I myself have my own mental health issues and I want to get out in the world, but I know that's not going to help anything. So if we reopen everything too soon, it's just going to get worse and we're going to prolong it. So as much as it seems like we're shortening our quarantine by opening things up soon, that's just not the reality because it will get worse and then we'll have to do everything again for possibly a longer period of time. So I think what Joey said is we really just have to wait this out, and hopefully if people start taking this seriously, we'll be able to see a shorter timeline.
Yeah, I think, as I said, I think things will change and restaurants and things will be different, but I think people just will rebel and won't let it stay everything closed that long just because, like I said, people want their jobs back. I think, yeah, like I think that you can't hide forever. Like I agree with social distancing and changing things for a bit, but I just think it has to open back up. Life has to continue on.
Being like optimistic, just as soon as this whole thing came and this pandemic like started, I think it could end just as fast. Like we just don't know.
I will say I'm encouraged because things in China look like they're starting to open back up. Wuhan had traffic for the first time in a very long time, I believe last week. Chinese Professional Baseball League has started back up, albeit without fans, but I mean, those have been really exciting to watch. The Rockton Monkeys have quite the batting order. Got to shore up the bullpen. I've been getting up at 5:30 for those games. But no, in all seriousness, I think I'm encouraged by the positive attitude of people. I think we've done a nice job, at least starting to flatten the curve. And who knows? I think now is a good time. If you happen to believe in something in a higher power, I think now is part of the time where you kind of hold on to those things. And I think that's encouraging.
I think that's an excellent note to end on, Ben. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. And thank you, everybody in this chat right now, for just touching in on such an interesting time in our lives right now where we don't really know what the immediate future holds. But for those of you who tuned into the Earth Day broadcast as well, thank you for tuning into that, along with our post show talking about the world of journalism and outside of that with COVID-19. Thank you all for tuning in.